Hello, hey there everyone. So, welcome to the stream. I just remembered that I forgot to set up one thing before going live, so I'm doing that right now. As you can tell, there isn't a stick figure in the bottom right, so I'm getting that set up, but that shouldn't take too long. If it wants to cooperate. So, how's everyone doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Hopefully my voice is able to actually get through the day. I actually have honey today, so should be a bit better. Good morning, or good evening, or good night, depending on your time zone. I hope that this works. Sometimes it's a bit finicky. We will be getting to covering things shortly. I just need to actually remember to set up my webcam before starting streaming. That generally is helpful. If need be, I can always do something else, but let me try one thing real quick, because it isn't wanting to cooperate as per normal, which is why I always do this beforehand. You knew that cobbling together like 3 different softwares to try and get a halfway decent stream is uncooperative at best. Give me 1 sec. Alright, I'm back. Hopefully that worked. Sometimes, if need be, we can just not have it going, that'd be fine. Because I don't particularly want to restart OBS right now. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it'll be working. It'll be fine. My computer will appreciate not having multiple things running at the same time. So, we can just get into it. No need to stress about things not working. So, let's just get into the Dark Archive, why don't we? Because there's a shit ton of archetypes in this book. And things that are not archetypes but are archetype adjacent, and there's also spells, there's also gear. There's also just so much other stuff for us to cover today. So today, I think that we should start off with the psychic archetype, which is rather simple. It's 1 page. So this shouldn't take too long, especially because a lot of it is very similar to every other caster archetype currently in the game. So, to take the psychic dedication, you have to have 14 intelligence or 14 charisma, and then you can cast spells as if you were a psychic. You choose one of the conscious minds, and then you get a spell repertoire with one of the standard cantrips. So this is not one of the unique cantrips that is exclusive to that conscious mind. So, for example, you don't get telekinetic rend if you chose distant grasp. You can get mage hand or telekinetic projectile. You can still amp it, and you get the unique change to that cantrip that you get for being a psychic, but you don't get the full selection of the 3 psi cantrips. Also, you get a focus point so you can actually amp it. And you choose what you want your key spellcasting ability to be between intelligence and charisma. Pretty simple. Basic thought form is the standard multi-class feat where you get a level 1 or 2 feat from the psychic. Basic psychic spellcasting is a basic spellcasting feat. Every single spellcasting archetype has one of these. Except you choose any common occult spell, or it can come from the granted spells from your conscious mind, or other spells you have access to that your GM says are fine. Advanced thought form is similar to basic thought form. it's standard. Psi development, though, is a bit different because you get access to another psi cantrip from your conscious mind, which is either the other standard cantrip or the unique surface psi level like cantrip. So for there, you could take telekinetic rend. And you increase your number of focus points by 1, so you have access to 2 out of 3 of the level 1 cantrips that a normal psychic would have access to. Expert and master spellcasting are exactly the same as, you know, standard casting archetypes. So honestly, super simple, and I know I mentioned this multiple times yesterday whenever I was going through the psychic. This works really well for a magus to multi-class into being a psychic, because stuff like produce flame and phase bolt and other, basically the psychic just has access to a ton of really good focus, or rather a lot of really good amps for cantrips that work amazingly with spell strike. So it's just a very good use of your feats, and you still get access to more spell slots, so it's not like you're losing anything. Okay, so the Thaumaturge archetype is also very simple. It fits on one page. Feels really good to be talking about things that fit on a single page. When yesterday we had to go through like 20 pages of pure conscious mind stuff or implement. Anyway, you have to have 14 charisma to take the Thaumaturge dedication, and you get a couple of things. You become trained in the Thaumaturge class DC, and you choose one implement, and you have it exclusively just so you can use this action here. Additionally, you have access to some esoterica, so you can actually use esoterica actions. You also become trained in either Arcana, Nature, Occultism, or Religion, and you can use Glimpse Vulnerability. So, while holding your implement, you select the creature that you can see, and until you use this ability again, they have a weakness of 2 against your unarmed and weapon strikes. So, yeah, I was expecting it to be a little bit more limited in what type of spells that it gives you, because the psychic is a bit more limited, but I suppose that they couldn't, like, just give you, like, they would really have to limit what spells you would get from the archetype. So I'm happy. It makes the archetype better. But so this is basically just you spend an action, you select a creature, that creature now takes 2 additional damage. And it's not to a specific damage type, so it just is you deal 2 additional damage. Basic Thaumaturgy is you get a level 1 or 2 Thaumaturge feat. Simple enough. Advanced Thaumaturgy, you get a higher level Thaumaturge feat. Again, simple enough. Also, I've never understood why the advanced feats that give you access to a feat that is higher level, that gives you access to a feat from a different class that is equal to half your level. I don't know why this is a level 6 feat, because there aren't any level 3 class feats, so you get the exact same selection of feats as if you took basic Thaumaturgy. I feel like this should just be a level 8 feat, so you can actually get access to level 4 feats right away whenever you take it. And yeah, I wish that the Psychic was out whenever I was playing through my Magus, because god, my Magus would have loved the Psychic. I could light even more stuff on fire. But Implement Initiate is really nice, because you get access to your implement, and your implement's initiate benefits. You can actually use your implement for things outside of just getting 2 additional damage. So it's basically, yeah, it means that you can use implement's interruption, you can use your amulet to actually reduce people's damage. It's just that's a very good use of a level 6 feat. Second to last is Magical Knowledge, which requires that you're trained in at least Arcana, Nature, Occultism, and Religion, and you also have to be expert in a different one of those skills. Yeah, like, I just feel like they should say you can take basic Thaumaturgy more than once, and you can also take advanced Thaumaturgy at level 8. I don't know, it just feels weird. It makes... on first reading, I think, oh, so that means I can get a level 3 Thaumaturge feat, and then I actually, like, my brain catches up, and I'm like, oh, there aren't any of those. But regardless, magical knowledge increases your proficiency with Arcana, Nature, Occultism, or Religion from expert to master, and another one of them from trained to expert. You also get a skill feat. So, I mean, yeah, that's really nice. Getting access to more skills, especially some, like, Arcana, Nature, Occultism, and Religion just come up a lot because they're associated with the different magical traditions. So you can use them to identify items, identify a lot of different creature types. They're just good skills. And free skill feats are never... You never turn that down. Okay, so Resolute requires that you're an expert in will saves, which by level 12, every class is going to be at least, at a minimum, an expert in will saves. And it just increases your will saves to master proficiency. Pretty honest, like, honestly, super, super simple archetype. This is not a very complicated multi-class archetype. Well, it can be a bit more complicated once you start taking other Thaumaturge feats, but if you want to see those, I covered all of them yesterday. So I'm just going to be moving on, because now we're on to the bulk of the book, after about 4.5 hours of covering the first 50 pages. So let's talk about the case files. I am going to be skipping over a lot of these, because a lot of the sections of the case files, because again, I'm covering the player facing options, not the GM options, and especially not the adventures, because Paizo, you buy the books to actually be able to run the adventures, because you can get all the player stuff on Arcastus Nethys in a couple of weeks. So I think that you can get master oh, can you only get master will saves from the monk dedication? I wouldn't know, because the only multi-class archetype that I've ever taken is a monk dedication. I just thought that there were other save boosting abilities in other archetypes. But if so, that's really good, especially because you can get master will saves at level 12 when Kenny Acumen only increases your will saves at level 17, I think. But regardless, that's actually really nice then. I'm just not that familiar with a lot of the multi-class archetypes. But regardless, let's talk about cryptids. Or more specifically, first off, how being an adventurer and being exposed to all kinds of really weird shit changes how your character works or thinks or just interacts with the world. Because, yeah, getting exposed to a bunch of really weird, very, very powerful creatures is probably going to change your body in some way, which is where the Aftermath feats come in. These are rare feats that are basically class feats that you can get access to based on running into particular types of creatures or entities. So your GM still has to give you permission to take them, or your GM just might give them to you for free depending on how good they actually are. Some of them aren't quite as good. So I can see a GM just giving them for free for flavor. But they're still, like, fun. So they start from level 4, and I think they go to, like, level 16. Some of them you're probably going to be running into in almost every campaign, and others are not nearly so common to actually qualify for. Speaking of which, Devil's Eye. So to qualify for Devil's Eye, you have to have made a bargain with a devil or won a legal case or similar to wits against a devil. So if your first reaction upon seeing a devil is to go all Crusader on it, then maybe you won't qualify for this all that much. But if you do actually make a bargain with them or, go to court, then this can be pretty useful. one of your eyes basically changes, although the iris color is still the same. Your eye is now red and your pupil is a vertical slit. And this helps you see loopholes and legal processes. So you gain the objection reaction, which we'll cover in a second. And you also become an expert in legal lore and get a +1 circumstance bonus to read or negotiate a treaty's contract or similar text. You're gonna make a very good lawyer. You also automatically scale your proficiency in legal lore, so at level 7 and level 15 you become a master and legendary respectively. You can also use legal lore to detect verbal loopholes, double entendres, hidden meanings, code, and contradictions. So it doesn't help you understand what people are saying when they're talking in code, but it can help you figure out maybe a bit more that they're even talking in code. And yeah, my groups that have run into devils have either been one of my groups is very Crusader, the other one is like, I mean, so long as you aren't telling us to kill someone, we'll do it. So some parties will definitely run into this, but if you have a good champion, good luck. Objection, though, first it allows for you to be to actually play as Phoenix Wright, but more importantly, you can use it once per minute whenever you have to attempt a saving throw against a linguistic effect, and whenever it happens, your eye is very happy and you find some kind of loophole which allows you to roll twice on your save, taking the better result. Linguistic effects aren't super common. I'm really not certain how many of them there really are, but a lot of the ones that do exist are pretty rough. Like, for example, Command is a really annoying spell because it's level 1 and it doesn't have incapacitation, it works till high level. It's just a very, very solid spell that has linguistics trait. So there are just some effects that you don't want to be affected by. Also, these work really well as things to give to enemies, because like as a GM, to give to NPCs, because you can decide if they ran into a devil at some point. You can just toss this on like an enemy character sheet. And yeah, Bon mot is one thing that comes up a lot. Demoralize is something that comes up a lot, but you don't make a saving throw there. I'm trying to look up how many actual linguistic effects there are, because it's going to be mainly saving throws for, like, sorry, mainly this would apply to spell effects, because those are the main situation wherein you're going to have to make a save. There's a fair amount looking at them. Suggestion is one, telepathic demand, command, biting words. Except biting words, that's not a saving throw one. But regardless, this is pretty nice. It's very situational. But depending on your campaign, legal lore can be very good. So the thing is, a lot of, like, charm, for example, or dominate, those aren't linguistic effects because you just manipulate the mind. Anything where you have to give someone a command to do something is. Also, me looking up, I'm realizing that me looking up linguistic effects on Archives of Nathis is just going to tell me spells that have the linguistics trait, but if you, like, every time you sustain the spell it has the linguistics trait, then that wouldn't pop up. Oh, okay. So, Echo of the Fallen is another level 4 feat. To be able to take this feat, you have to have helped lay a haunt, ghost, or spirit to rest. And now, you're kind of haunted by an echo of the soul that you put to rest. So, you pick one martial weapon and one skill, or an advanced weapon if you're already trained in all martial weapons, that makes sense for whatever the spirit was. So then once per day as an action, you can allow the echo of the spirit that is following you around into your body, and you look very spooky while this happens. While in this state, you become trained in whatever weapon it was and an expert in the skill that you chose, and also while you're in this state, the echo can speak through you, and you get a +4 bonus on saves against possession effects. Because you're already being possessed, they kind of have to kick out the current tenant. This lasts for 10 minutes, and at level 7 you become a master in the skill that you chose, and at level 13 you become an expert in the weapon, and at level 15 you become legendary in the skill that you chose. I feel pretty confident in saying that you can completely ignore the fact that you become trained in a weapon, and instead this is especially good for becoming an expert or better in the skill that you chose for 10 minutes. 10 minutes isn't a whole lot for some applications of skills, but in others it can be very useful. Because basically the problem with becoming proficient in a weapon is trained is not very high, and expert is also not very high by 13th level. So if you're going to be using weapons frequently as a part of your game plan, you probably already have better proficiency anyway. Still, it's very good for getting temporary proficiency in a skill. Okay, so Lingering Chill. For Lingering Chill to be taken, you have to be brought to 0 hit points by an enemy that has the cold trait, or a enemy's ability that has the cold trait. So presumably, if you get taken down by Ray of Frost or Cone of Cold, you're going to also qualify for this. So, you're always cold now. Your skin is cold to the touch, and basically ice runs in your veins. You are perpetually chilly. You can cast Ray of Frost as an innate cantrip, and you also get resistance to cold damage equal to half your level. And also you can survive in severe cold temperatures with no issue. Honestly, pretty cool feat. It's not super good, especially because it doesn't actually give you proficiency with primal or arcane spells. Or no, with primal spells, so technically you're untrained in your spell attack roll. But I think any reasonable GM would look at that and say, yeah, you're trained in primal's attack spell roll, like primal attack spells. So this isn't like, this doesn't make Ray of Frost completely useless. Ooh. Oh, that's actually a good point about the universalist focus spell. That's yeah. Just say, okay, I'm gonna invite the ghost into me, and now I'm gonna throw a great pick at someone's head. Doesn't matter how proficient you are. Elysium's Cadence is a fun way of potentially making the party uncomfortable. So you must have partied extensively with an Azada, or entered a romantic relationship with an Azada, which I feel like Azadas like to do. Oh, you're always trained. I didn't know that. I haven't seen that anywhere before, but it makes sense. But Azadas, by the way, are chaotic good celestials. They're kind of party animals. But regardless, you get a +1 circumstance bonus on checks to make an impression on anyone, and that increases by 1 if the target is chaotic good. Also, once per hour, you can use Set Free whenever you attempt to remove or counteract an effect that gives the confused, controlled, fascinated, immobilized, paralyzed, or restrained conditions, and you can roll twice and take the better. So, interestingly enough, this doesn't apply to the grab condition. Yeah, innate spells are just funky. But This doesn't apply to grabbed, so it isn't quite as good. Because if it applied to grab, then this would work on checks to escape. But it's still good for restrained. Oh no, because grabbed applies the immobilized condition also. So it would work for getting out of grapples. But all of those conditions are really bad to have. What archetype is this? This isn't an archetype, these are aftermath feats. So these are feats that you can qualify for taking with your class feats whenever you've been exposed to some outside element. So for this, you've been exposed to an Azada. For Jelly Body, you have to have been reduced to 0 hit points while engulfed by an ooze. Lingering Chill, you have to be exposed to cold and have almost died from it. So these aren't exactly archetypes, but they're just things that you can get because Galarian's weird. Now that I think about it, that's just the entire book, isn't it? Yeah, I'm curious how they're gonna format this. To really make it clear that these are separate feats. Yeah, they're general class feats, which is weird because those haven't existed before. It hopes that they're all rare. So it's pretty clear that they're different. Yeah. But Jelly Body is honestly the creepiest one yet, because you have to have been engulfed by news and then brought to 0 hit points. And now you're kind of jelly. Your flesh is soft to the touch and transparent enough to show bone. You get resistance to precision damage and damage from critical hits. Honestly, very good resistance. But you can also put up to 1 bulk of items inside of your body by sticking them into the jello. It's still obvious that it's in there, but it doesn't count towards your encumbered or max bulk. Be prepared to creep out every single person that you do this around, for good reason. Because it's creepy. But also kind of fun and just makes me want for an official ooze morph. I know that there's going to be a ooze... I'm forgetting the exact name for it, but there's going to be like an ooze third-party ancestry that's coming out at some point. I forget exactly when. But all the groups that I play in are true Paizo simps that just don't use a lot of third-party. So I'm hoping for a first-party version. Because the groups I play with just don't use third-party much. I'm still looking forward to it though, because I want to see what it's like. Regardless, Gift of the Horde is the only dragon aftermath effect, and it shockingly does not deal with actually attacking dragons. Instead, you have to have done an important task for a dragon, mainly getting treasure. So now your eyes glow a bit, they change color, and your limbs and neck are covered in scales. You gain access to the Dragon Breath Sorcerer Bloodline spell, so you can breathe out a cone or a line of some type of generally elemental energy, and you get a focus point. And you refocus by counting and arranging treasure. And I would argue that none of these are particularly powerful. So I think that if you're in a campaign where you're thinking about taking these, I would argue that the GM... I think it would be okay for the GM to give these feats for, like, quote-unquote free. Like, you don't have to spend a class feat, you just kind of get them. But because some of these could arguably come with roleplay consequences, like you have a devil eye, or you're uncomfortably cold to be around, or you're made out of jello. So a lot of these I could see as having actual like non-mechanical downsides, and if your GM is okay with like playing that up, I could see them giving them out for free. Fun little treats for people who are willing to get the shit beaten out of them. Or alternatively, like once you qualify for them, you have to do something in game, and then you actually get the feat, like a side quest, like Crazy Eye said. Yeah, because it's really hard to build these as a build. Like you could say, because it requires enemy, so you can't say like, okay, blast me with a Ray of Frost until I'm down and then heal me up, and then I can take Linger and Chill. So Siphon Life is, I feel, the most likely one that you're going to qualify for in any campaign, because goddamn, there are a lot of oh, actually no, it's not undead, it's the negative trait, so I don't actually know how common that is. But regardless, for 2 actions, once you have the feat, then you can attempt an unarmed strike against someone, and if you hit them, they take 46 additional negative damage with what is effectively a basic fortitude save. Although if they do get a crit success, then they're immune for a minute. So it's not really a basic save, but it's a basic save. So the other effect is that this is basically Vampiric Touch, because if you deal any negative damage, you get an equal number of temporary hit points which last for a minute. And again, this isn't limited to like once a minute, you can just do this every single turn. But the damage doesn't scale, so that's alright damage at level 10, but it's not going to be as good at level 15. Yeah, I really like Jello Body, but it's also disturbing, which is part of the reason why I like it. I want to check for a second. How many creatures are there actually that have the negative trait? Because I'm assuming ghosts or creatures from the negative energy plane, but I don't believe that it's in general undead. Now, Petrified Skin is one that was actually talked about a lot before this book came out. It was the... Oh, no. Oh my god, there's a lot of creatures that have... Oh, no. Okay, every undead has the negative trait. Never mind. It is very easy to qualify for Siphon Life. So... Petrified Skin just requires that you've been petrified by someone, and presumably, considering you're taking a feat, you survived, and you're no longer petrified. Mostly. So some of your skin is still petrified, which is actually good for you, because you now have a Stone Fist unarmed attack that deals 1d8 bludgeoning damage and has the shove trait. It doesn't have Agile or Finesse though, but it's just big punch. Maybe I should actually click on these. So they don't have the negative trait, so I don't... Oh, I had just searched negative. I forgot to click on the trait. There are 2 creatures that have the negative trait. Never mind. Okay, you're never gonna qualify for Siphon Life. I got a bit too overzealous. Yeah, there's a total of 2. Oh yeah, that's a lot less good. It had seen negative healing on every undead, and that's what I saw. Okay. But you get more than just an unarmed attack from Petrified Skin. Whenever you have fewer than half your hit points, you increase the damage die from Stone Fist to 1d10, and you also get resistance to all physical damage except done by adamantine, equal to your con mod. I really hope that there's a planar source book. It is my top pick for like the next themed source book. We'll see him at Gen Con probably. So like it should also like Petrified Skin or not Siphon Life should function similar to Lingering Chill, where if someone uses a negative ability on you, it should also count. Because I'm gonna spoil things for you. There are more Aftermath feats that deal with the other four elements, or sorry, other three elements. There's fire, water, air, and like I think there's acid. But regardless, the other ones work like Lingering Chill and not like Siphon Life. So Siphon Life should have some extra prerequisites. But regardless, getting resistance to physical damage is very good. Also, whenever you get the dying condition, instead of dying and starting to bleed out, you can just choose to turn to stone again. This doesn't heal you at all, but it does mean that you are not bleeding out. So presumably once someone casts Stone to Flesh on you, then they can just heal you once you're out of combat. Dormant Eruption, here's the fire one. This one has the same prerequisites as Lingering Cold, except fire. And you're always hot to the touch, which means that you get resistance to both cold and fire, resistance 5. And whenever anyone strikes you with a melee attack or touches you, they take 1d6 persistent fire damage as you just light everything that you touch on fire. Thermal Eruption is something that you can do once per day, where you just explode in a 20-foot emanation of 16d6 fire damage. And you lose every effect of this entire feat until your next daily prep. So if someone wants to cast a touch spell on you, or I don't know, treat your wounds or something, or lay on hands, they get lit on fire. Now, admittedly, if they have any way to get over resistance 6 damage, then this doesn't actually affect them at all. So maybe invest in your party getting rings of fire resistance. It'll make things a lot smoother. So Sink or Swim is the water feat. Your body looks like it is made out of water. So Undyne, like, times 10. Let's see. No, the difference between... I'm forgetting the exact difference between... there is a difference between the astral plane and the ethereal plane that I don't know if it's been defined in 2e yet, but in Pathfinder 1e, I'm currently looking it up. The astral plane is a plane that connects the material plane and the inner planes. The inner planes are like negative energy plane, the positive energy plane, and then the elemental planes to the outer planes. Outer planes are all of the aligned ones like Hell, Heaven, Elysium, the Abyss. So the astral plane connects the elemental planes and the material planes to the outer planes. The ethereal plane is specifically a plane that connects the material plane and the shadow plane. Yeah, Pathfinder's plane system is complicated, needlessly so. So, what Sink or Swim does is it gives you a swim speed equal to your land speed. If you already had one, it increases it by 10. And you can also get water transfer, which is once per minute. When you're on land next to a body of water, you go into the body of water. and you emerge onto land in a different area within 120 feet. So you can just teleport through water without the teleportation trait. Oh, I thought... I am looking through a very basic piece of information on the planes, so it's certainly missing things. And also, who knows how they've changed things since then. So Fey Life is a level 16 feat. So Fey Life is a level 16 feat that you have helped save a Fey from death or some other fate that that the Fey considered to be worse than death. So now everything that you touch, your skin, your hair, everything you touch, and everything within 5 feet of you changes to be the most vibrant hues possible, although as you move around it fades. You can also summon Fey as a 7th level primal spell once per day, and at 18th level it's an 8th level summon Fey, and at 20th level it's a 9th level summon Fey. And the first time that you die after you get this feat, you immediately are returned to life at 27 hit points, and you now have the Fey trait, and your eyes become rainbow, and you take on some visual aspect that doesn't have any mechanical benefits, like wings, horns, or you're made out of plants now. The second time that you die, though, you awaken in the first world, with just looking like the Fey that originally helped you. And you can still be returned to life if your friends build a shrine and then hold a really, really nice party, or if they offer up 3 things to you. And anytime that you die after that, you still wake up on the first world, but you don't care or really remember your first life anymore. This is actually how Feys work, or not Fey. Fey is both the singular and plural. But Fey are like immortal and eternal. Whenever they die, they just go back to the first world. You just become Fey with this one. Walk on Wind is the air version of Sink or Swim and Dormant Eruption and Lingering Chill. I haven't looked through a lot of the items yet to know if you can make the Poltergust 5000, but there might be a way. I'm not sure. Although you can kind of make a Poltergust through the Exorcist archetype from Book of the Dead, because there you have a mirror that you can trap ghosts in. Although it's not a vacuum cleaner, but they're not going to put out a vacuum cleaner. Regardless, Walk on Wind. You're very light on your feet. Very light on your feet, because you can straight up to half your land speed across calm air. And if you try to carry anyone with you, you fall. It doesn't say whether or not you can go up or down, so I choose to say that you can go up. This is just a constant airwalk. Yeah, no, this is just a actually constant airwalk, because you don't fall if you end your turn or end your movement on air. That's really good. But also both the Psychic and Thaumaturge have like fly as a constant effect at level 16. So it's not quite as special, but it's still nice and very, very cool. We're not going to be covering the cryptid adjustments because, again, that's GM stuff that I'm not really qualified to actually talk about because I don't GM things. So we can talk about the gear a bit. A lot of this stuff isn't like super. Yeah, a lot of it's very situational because it deals with weird, creepy creatures that aren't going to show up in every campaign. Okay. The Bale Blood Draft is an alchemical item that you can drink, and then the next time that you drink an elixir that has a duration somewhere between 1 minute and 1 hour, its duration is extended by 50%. So instead of lasting for 1 hour, it lasts for an hour and a half. However, once drinking it, you suffer some sort of eerie side effect for a week, and if you drink another one, it extends the duration. Sorry, if you drink another one from the same batch, it extends the duration, and drinking one from a different batch gives you a different drawback. And the side effects are stuff like your shadow becomes that of a monstrous winged fiend, or light breezes die around you, weather vanes slowly point towards you, or your reflection is now a pallid skeletal version of yourself. Basically, this item is derived from a blend of weird blood, and a lot of the stories about cryptids are not actually about cryptids, but about people who drunk this, because it kind of makes it seem like there's more going on around you than there actually is. The Chaos Collar is both a really funny item for PCs to use, and also really messed up for hunters, because you put the collar onto a creature, and then specifically it is a companion invested item, so you can't put this on a person, but then 3 times a month, randomly, it's random 3 days a month or 3 nights a month, they change into a random terrifying creature, and then in the morning they turn back. But if they're killed while in this new form, which doesn't change their stats at all, by the way, they keep that form and the collar falls off. So it's a way to make your kills look much, much more impressive than they actually are. Whew. The Chimera Thread is a kind of similar idea, where it allows for you to stitch together various carcasses from more animals into a single carcass that actually looks legit. Which people have done this a lot in real life. This is actually drawn from real life events of trying to create weird things that people found in the Americas and brought back to Europe that were totally fake. Hook of the False Foe is interesting. Once per day, you activate the cloak and it covers your head, reshaping your appearance into a locally feared cryptid. You don't have to know about it. It just knows the locally feared cryptids. If there's no local creature like that in lore, it instead changes you into something imagined by whoever made the cloak in the first place. So a cryptid from their area, presumably. Apparently, a really disturbingly frequent cryptid is a gaunt figure with triple jointed fingers, an eyeless, hairless head with a lamprey mouth in the center of its face, and stubbly tentacles waving down its neck. I don't know what that's referencing. If anyone does know what that's referencing, I'd be curious to know. Basically, you get the effects of a 3rd level humanoid form spell that lasts for an hour if you're a medium cryptid, or a 5th level humanoid form spell that lasts for 10 minutes if you're large. Also, while in this form, any wounds that you leave are changed to seem like they were created by the cryptids, by the normal actual cryptid, rather than made by you, but someone can inspect it to figure that out. So it's a great way of framing a cryptid for murder. Ooh. So, the Hoax Hunter's Kit is basically a kit that you can use specifically for hunting down cryptids. So it gives you a bonus on recall knowledge checks to know about whatever creature that you're tracking, or on actual checks to track a creature. Also, if you fail a knowledge check about a creature that you're tracking, or a cryptid or something, then you're able to eliminate at least one thing, one common type of animal that it isn't. So you don't know what it is that you're tracking down in the middle of the dark woods, but it's not an owl bear. Now, I don't know the story behind old Tillamoquillan? but they're a unique item, so you're not going to be getting this most likely. It is most likely a something from the adventure from this case file. But basically, it's a weird stitched together animal that has a mace for a tail apparently, where if you rub its claws, you're lucky for a day. Nothing too crazy. Sampling ammunition is a type of magical ammunition that can be either an arrow or a bolt. And the head of it is a pointed glass cylinder with a hollow core. Upon hitting a corporeal creature, it takes a sample of their skin, blood, or flesh. Or skin, blood, and flesh. It then falls to the ground below, wherever it was hit. It's sealed and magically preserved, although once it's opened, it deteriorates as normal. So that this can just help you get samples of materials to determine what exactly it is that, like, what the fuck are you fighting? Pretty much. Okay, so on to the cryptid class feats, which are basically just creepily themed class feats for druids and rangers. So first is Cryptic Spell, which is a druid feat. It's a metamagic feat in level 4, where you hide the spells that you are casting as just weird, creepy shit happening around you. So you attempt a nature check against all observers' perception DCs, and if you succeed, they don't notice that you're casting a spell, no matter what. They might notice the effects of the spell, but not that you're casting. It hides these by weird croaks and frogs, or sway of trees, or things that catch their attention otherwise. Wolf in sheep's clothing requires that you have training in deception, and it allows for you to impersonate creatures with the animal, beast, or plant traits. So you can actually use deception to appear like you're a tree. Or you can try to appear as a werewolf, or a cow, or an actual sheep. It's a very situational feat, but it has a lot of fun RP potential. So Can't You See is an honestly very, very good stealth feat that also requires training in occultism, but whenever a creature attempts to point out your location, they have to succeed at a DC 14 flat check to actually do it. If they fail, their allies misunderstand, and they don't know where you are. On a critical failure, they think they pointed out somewhere different. All of these are class feats, despite the fact that most of them are associated with skills. So they are specifically restricted to druids and rangers. Which sucks, because these are very, very cool, and honestly, most of them feel like they should be skill feats. Like, this would be so fun as a skill feat, so you could pick it up on, like, a rogue. But regardless, you're, like, it's kind of a horror movie trope or a cryptid trope thing of, like, trying to point out something, or one character saying, oh, look, something's there. And then by the time everyone else looks over, it's gone. And now that's you. Eerie Environs is a pretty simple thing. You have to be trained in intimidation and trained in stealth. And if you're hidden from a creature, you can attempt to demoralize it without losing your hidden condition. Because there's just creepy sounds around, and the environment itself is creepy because you're there. So you don't take a penalty if they don't understand the language, and you don't lose the hidden trait. Eerie Traces is an interesting exploration activity where you leave behind... oh yeah, no, this is great for enemies to have. This is better for enemies to have than PCs. Or alternatively, this is amazing for a chaotic nature party who just wants to fuck with people. But Eerie Traces is basically, you can choose to leave weird and unnerving tracks behind whenever you're moving around. So you move at half your overland speed, but whoever's trying to track you has to make a will save. On a success, they are completely unaffected, but on a failure, they're frightened one as long as they try and follow you. And this doesn't decrease until they stop. It comes back if they try and start tracking you again. And if they enter an encounter with you, then they start off frightened one. So there's just something unnerving about everything that you do and all the tracks that you leave behind that it's just weird. And also, if they critically fail, then they're frightened too. Forgotten Presence is a very interesting druid feat where creatures that are attempting to recall knowledge about you take a -2 penalty, and you can cast Modify Memory as a primal spell. So you can just make the world forget you exist. And this is another feat that is much better for NPCs to have, or at least to have this as an ability on their stat block, because let's be real here. How often do NPCs actually make recall knowledge checks on PCs? Like, never. The GM just decides what they should know. Yeah. Eerie Proclamation is probably one of my favorite feats that I've read so far in the book, because for 2 actions, once per hour, and you have to be an expert in occultism and an expert in survival. Both druids and rangers can take this. And for 2 actions, while you are in natural terrain or an abandoned or relatively unused artificial terrain, you declare that a 10 by 10 foot square is somehow ominous and dangerous. So, like, oh, by the way, that's cursed. Or, like, oh, you're gonna have a bad time if you walk towards me through this alleyway. And if anyone moves into that territory, they have to make a will save against their class DC or spell DC. If they succeed, nothing happens. If they fail, something goes horribly wrong for them. Actually what happens is dependent on the GM, but regardless, they roll a d4 to figure out what condition they get for 2 rounds. This is like some kind of, I don't know, natural accident, like a bear trap happens to be in the area, or they, I don't know, a tree branch falls out and hits them on the head, or I don't know, just other weird creepy stuff. If it's a critical failure, it's even worse. The D4 results are Clumsy 2, Enfeebled 2, Stupefied 2, or Dazzled. And the critical failure effects are just 1 higher, as you can see. Obscured Emergence is a level 12 ranger feat. You have to be an expert in stealth to take it. Whenever you stop being hidden due to your own actions, you gain concealment until the start of your next turn, as people's eyes just can't find you. You can't use this concealment to hide, but it is still pretty useful. Nice 20% miss chance if you can't continue to try to hide. Again, this is probably better for NPCs. Bizarre Transformation is a metamagic feat that can affect Wild Shape, or whenever you use it before casting Wild Shape, you can pick a single natural attack that you have, or unarmed attack. This isn't 1E. And then the damage from that attack changes to be bludgeoning, cold, electricity, fire, poison, piercing, or slashing. So if you realize, oh, we're up against something that's weak to fire, well, I'll turn into a bear, but one of my paws is made out of fire. And yeah, I completely understand about wanting to not just put out feats for core robot classes, because a lot of my favorite classes are non-core rulebook. I really hope that they don't fall into that trap. But we're done with all the cryptid feats, so that means we're on to the next case file, which doesn't have as much stuff, or rather doesn't have as much stuff for players, which is secret societies. Oh, the Thaumaturge is so good. Honestly, one of my favorite design classes. It works really well. But let's talk about the occult skill feats, which are just occult and paranormal practices. Oh, that's right, they did sneak a new animal companion in there. Let me jump back there. Yeah, so the unseen animal companion is, instead of savage or nimble, you get a bonus to wisdom and strength. A bonus to 2 to wisdom, and its strength, dex, and con increased by 1. And they do 3 additional damage, and an additional 1d4 precision damage against flat-footed targets, and improves stealth. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know all that much about animal companions to really say whether or not that's good, but it's certainly interesting. But occult skill feats are really interesting. They're generally ways of using existing skills and occultism to do weird things that those skills shouldn't really be able to be used for. So archetype requires that you are an expert in occultism, and then once per hour you can stare at someone for a minute without blinking, and then you learn a series of information. You learn its current attitude towards you, you learn its current emotional state, and you learn a general assessment of their health, like conditions. And you might have to succeed at an occultism check against the affliction DC to determine, like, subtle conditions. In addition, you also get a secret occultism check against the deception DC, and if you succeed, then you identify if they're being deceptive in any way, but not how they're being deceptive. It's a mechanical vibe check. It's, I'm going to stare at this NPC and figure out whether or not they like me, which, to be fair, you might finish this off and see, oh, they're friendly, but they're very quickly moving towards indifferent because you're staring at them. It's a fun feat. Also, because you get all this stuff for free, you can do this on anyone regardless of how powerful they are. You don't have to succeed against many DCs. Ooh. So, automatic writing is a interesting ability. So you can spend 10 minutes holding your writing utensil over a place to write, and then your hand writes on its own, guided by the spirits in the area. At the end of these 10 minutes, you can make a recall knowledge check with any lore skill that you are not trained in, using your occultism modifier instead of the your actual modifier for that lore. And then after this becomes stupefied 1 for 10 minutes. So if you know that you're going to be running into a fight with a vampire, spend 10 minutes and recall knowledge on the vampire using vampire lore. This is really good if you know already that you're going to be running into a specific type of creature. Like if you hear, I don't know, oh, there's a bunch of, I don't know, werewolves savaging a town down the road, and you've been focusing and putting a lot of your skill increases into occultism, this is very good. Chromotherapy is a medicine skill, which sounds really complicated, but is actually pretty simple, which is whenever you're holding a torch, a lantern, or some light source in one hand, you can change the color of the light to provide one ally within the bright light assisted recovery against persistent damage. But if you're in bright light from sunlight, that overrides your light from your torch, pretty much. Depending on the color of the light, you help with different persistent damage. This is incredibly situational, both because persistent damage isn't hugely common, and also just you could always stride over and provide first aid. So it's a very situational feat. Or you could just, well, I guess it's a skill feat, but I don't know. I'm not really feeling this one. Crystal Healing is a level 1 feat where you can use a couple of cheap crystals to allow you to use occultism to treat disease or treat poison using it rather than using medicine. And as you increase your proficiency, you can buy more and more expensive gems to get increasingly high item bonuses on occultism. The thing is, you can also just buy an item that gives a permanent item bonus to all occultism checks. So you only really need to take Crystal Healing to be able to use occultism at all for treating poison and disease. It's okay. In a way, I'm almost okay that it's bad because it's Crystal Healing, so it shouldn't work. But it is still like pretty useful. But you already get so much out of being good at medicine that, like, it saves you from having to invest into another skill. So it's good. Folk Dowsing is a level 3 feat where you have to be trained in survival. And if you search while holding a dowsing rod or something, in addition to the normal effects, you can also roll a secret survival check to detect the largest source of water, oil, or some non-bodily fluid of some kind in the area. Even if it's hidden from you. Which also uses the Train Simple DC with hard or very hard, which is going to make it like DC 18. And if you're an expert in survival, then you can also use this to find metal, minerals, or nearby graves. This is a much better ability for NPCs to have than for PCs to invest a skill feat into, because how often do you need to find a hidden aquifer in a Pathfinder campaign? Gotta love lukewarm tea. No, that's not even lukewarm. That's just straight room temperature. So morphic manipulation requires that you're trained in nature, but you can sit for 10 minutes with a small, natural, non-creature plant, a flower or a bush or something, and then you coax it into growing. From seed to sprout, sprout to plant, plant to flower, or flower to fruit. And if it doesn't have proper nutrients, then it's gonna die after 5 minutes. But it's still fun. You can only use this once a day without getting fatigued, and once you use it like twice, then you can't use it for the rest of the day. Again, highly situational to an extreme, almost to a fault. But I guess if you need it, it's useful. I wish that you could use it more than one time a day, because for as situational as this is, I feel like it should be especially good whenever that situation actually comes up. So read Psychometric Resonance is an interesting occultism feat, which you can read the impressions left behind on objects by previous owners. It works similarly to detect magic, but you have to touch pretty much everything in every room, and you detect items that had particular emotional impact on the people that lived here or were here before. So you could find a murder weapon, or you could find a childhood toy. If you find an item with a resonance, then you can spend a minute concentrating on it to get a vision of the face of the person who actually left such a powerful emotion. If it's a painful emotion, then you take psychic damage, but because this isn't 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, you take mental damage. I don't know why it says psychic damage, because that isn't a thing in 2e. And then we have another one of my favorite feats that I've read so far in this entire book, Skeptic's Defense, which is a reaction once per day. If you're a master in intimidation, and you're targeted by a mental spell, you just don't believe in this magic bullshit. You scoff and verbally disagree with the mental effect, trying to counteract it using your intimidation modifier. And if it works, you ignore it, though everyone else is also affected. If whoever caused the mental effect that you successfully counteract understands what language you spoke and can like understand language, which means they have a higher intelligence mod than -3, then that creature becomes stupefied 1 for a round, because you literally just said, I don't believe in magic, and that stopped magic. I really want to play at some point a complete, like, kind of conspiracist. No, like, there's a psychic class now, but all of their abilities do mental damage. I think that it's just a misprint, or maybe at some point it was meant to be a different damage type, but it doesn't make sense for it to be psychic damage. It really should be mental damage. But I really want to play a skeptic at some point who just like kind of just doesn't believe that magic exists in an objectively magical world, because that just sounds funny. And this is the feat for that character. And then that is so next up we have some Secret Society gear. This stuff is super simple. A lot of it isn't all that important for players. Stuff like a false bottom mug, or drops that can make people kind of forgetful and then later just make them confused so they just attack people, or specific items that are used for identifying other members of a secret society, ink that only shows up under moonlight, parchment where you can tap letters on a page, and then once you do a particular action, those letters light up so you can hide secret messages, notes that light themselves on fire, coins that light up in a particular symbol whenever they're shown with other coins with the same symbol, so you can identify other people. Well, that's not exactly what the sibling coin does, but that's basically what the sibling coin does. What is the silent bell? It's higher level than I was thinking. I haven't read through all of these. I've read through pretty much everything so far, but not these. So the silent bell is used to seal off areas from noise. So if you want to talk about a weird, like, your secret society stuff and you don't want people overhearing, you can use a secret bell to create a 20-foot cube that isolates sound and prevents it from getting out. Secret society portrait basically helps keep track of who is inside of their secret society. If anyone betrays them, it says traitor on there about them. Although you do get a will save to try and avoid it revealing their treachery. Which, I mean, that's just cool. that's just a fun thing to put into, like, oh, secret society's base that your players are running through. So then they get an idea of, oh, maybe we should try and talk to this individual. And then a Traitor's Ring, which helps you, you know, discreetly poison people. With a DC 15 perception check, meaning that level 1 characters have a good chance of spotting how things are getting poisoned. And that's actually all that there is for, like, real player-facing stuff and from secret societies. So now we can move on to probably one of, if not my favorite, sections of the book. That being deviant abilities. So deviant abilities are weird magical items, or not magical items, magical abilities that people have in Galarian that aren't magic, because magic has certain rules that it follows. It follows spell slots, pretty much. Weird deviant abilities are just weird shit that happens and no one knows why. People could have them for a day, they could have them because they walk near a weird obelisk, they could just show up one day with no reason. They don't need to explain why they do things, they just do them. Deviant abilities are rare, so you can't just choose to get them. If you want a character to have a deviant ability, you have to get your GM's permission, because they are just weird shit, and they're also going to hurt your character. So they always come with a backlash. The two ways that you are mainly going to be getting them is through your character background. Here you can basically choose what type of deviant ability do you want. You can basically, you're going to decide in your backstory and at character creation whether or not you want a deviant ability here. The other way is for your GM to just give them to the party. You don't have to use class feats at this point, you just have deviant abilities. This is great for, like, oh no, the party was exposed to a weird situation and therefore they can all shoot fire out of their eyes. That works. That's allowed. The GM can say, oh, you all have weird ghostly hands that are following you around doing whatever you want them to do without you actually deciding for them to do it. You don't want this to keep on happening, so you're gonna be trying to, like, find a way to turn off the deviant ability. It's great for, like, an episodic sort of campaign where it's just weird things happening, or weird things are happening now, or I don't know. You all got exposed to some radiation, and instead of making your characters to have cancer, I'm giving you some weird stuff that's gonna probably stab you in the back. So there are 3 different classifications of deviant abilities. Yes, this is the X-Men abilities. Like, these are just X-Men abilities. They are multiple ones are just taken straight from X-Men. I really love these. So if it asks for a DC for any saving throw, then it's equal to your class DC or spell DC, and any attack roll is equal to 10 lower than whatever DC you're using, unless it just says make a strike, in which case it's a normal strike. So, like, if you're using a dagger, it's to make a strike, it's the dagger strike instead of 10 minus your DC. So also an important thing is that every single different type of ability, there are 3 classifications. There's dragon, troll, and wraith abilities. Each one has a different type of backlash that we'll be covering. And every single time that you use your deviation, you roll a DC 5 flat check. On a success, you use it, and the DC for subsequent flat checks increases by 5. So the first time you use it, it's DC 5, second time it's DC 10, third time it's DC 15, and fourth time and any other time thereafter is DC 20 flat check. If you fail, you still use your deviation. It still goes off. However, you suffer a backlash effect and the DC reduces back to 5. And you move up the track. There are 3 different tiers of deviation backlash. So basically you can fail this flat check 3 times, and then after that you can't use your deviation anymore. Also they can't be reduced, prevented, or otherwise bypassed. So any damage that you take cannot be prevented by resistance or immunity. Fun. Also, you can awaken any of the Deviant abilities to improve them by taking the Awaken Power feats. These are universal. These can be taken by anyone with a Deviant ability. Level 4 and level 10 respectively. So let's talk about the dragon abilities. Dragon abilities are not actually dragon abilities. They just deal with the manipulation of energy. They could come from dragons, or they could come from coming into contact with the plane of earth or plane of fire. It doesn't really matter. They are just abilities that deal with energy. Whenever you gain a dragon type deviation, you have to choose cold, electricity, fire, or sonic damage, and all abilities from that deviation deal the same type of damage. So the most basic one you can get at level 2 or earlier, just depends on when your GM gives it to you, is called Blasting Beams. While you have a hand free, you can spend an action to just blast out energy. At someone within 30 feet, you deal 1d6 for every 2 levels that you have to the target, or double if you critically hit them. This is really nice. It's just a one-handed ranged attack within 30 feet. That is basically a cantrip. If you have 2 options whenever you awaken it. Same for every single deviant ability. You can either make it so your beams come out of your eyes instead of your hand, meaning you don't need a hand free anymore, but it reduces the damage to 1d4 instead of 1d6, but it gets the agile trait. Generally, that's really good. You can just get an agile attack that you can just not make at will, but you can make frequently throughout the day with a range of 30 feet. Not going to turn that down. The other is that your beam, which still comes through your hands, is a line instead of a single target blast. That people get a reflex save against. You can also spend 2 actions to make it into a 60-foot line instead of a 30-foot line. And yes, these abilities are incredibly X-Men, but they're also super, super anime. Consume energy is a reaction that you can use that it triggers whenever an enemy within 60 feet uses anything that has a trait associated with, like, the same trait. So if someone casts a fireball and this is a fire ability, like you chose fire for the trait for consume energy, you can activate it. You immediately try and counteract against the effect as you draw it into your body. You eat the fireball. You gain temporary hit points equal to double the counteract level of whatever ability you counteracted. And those last for 1 minute. The 2 awakening options are that the energy that you eat helps empower you. The next ability that you use from the dragon classification increases its range by 30 feet, or increases the area by 10 feet. It's a cone or a line. And if you don't use this within a minute, it fails. So you can basically eat fire to make your fire stronger. The other option is that you channel some of the energy into your next attack. So you choose one of your weapons or an unarmed strike that you have, and then until your next turn strikes with that weapon, deal an additional 1d6 damage. So it's okay. Honestly, the awakening isn't nearly as good or as important as just being able to cancel out certain spells. If you talk with your GM and you learn that, oh, Is cold an option? I'm forgetting. Cold is an option. So, just to use a 1E example, if you're going to be playing through the Reign of Winter adventure path, picking cold for consume energy is a great idea because, God, you're going to be running into so many different cold effects. Storming Breath is a level 6 Deviant ability, which you just breathe out a 30-foot cone that deals 46 damage and increases by 1d6 every even level. So it heightens pretty well. It's a big area effect, and again, you can use this a lot, so long as you don't fail your flat checks, of course. So the Awakening options is that it gets more powerful, meaning that anyone who critically fails their save is knocked prone. And the other option is that your blast has a lot of kickback, meaning that it knocks you backwards. So whenever you use it, you fly 15 feet backwards in a straight line opposite of your blast, and this doesn't trigger reactions. So you can either use this to get out of dodge, so, oh no, a bunch of people are storming towards the wizard, because obviously the wizard doesn't want to be in melee, so the wizard opens up their mouth and breathes out a cone of electricity, knocking themselves away from the people who are trying to kill them. In general, though, just having a big AoE with decent damage is very good to have. Propulsive Leap is the final dragon ability, or deviant ability, and it is very good. You spend one action, and for 1 minute, you gain a fly speed equal to your level, or 20 feet, whichever is higher. If you aren't on solid ground at the end of your turn, though, you have to make another backlash check, though you remain airborne even if you fail the check unless it knocks you unconscious. So you just get a fly speed for 1 minute. Just try and end your turn on solid ground so you can still actually use your... So you have a higher chance of being able to use your deviant ability for the rest of the day to get fly speed even more often. Getting fly speed is very, very useful for basically every single character, so this is really good. The two Awakening options increases, one of them just increases your speed by 15 feet whenever you're flying, and the other allows for you to use your propulsion as a makeshift weapon, so every time that you fly by someone, all creatures adjacent to you take 1d4 points of damage for every 2 levels you have with a basic reflex save. So you can do a flyby and damage everyone that you go by because there's a shit ton of fire keeping you up in the air. The backlash for Energetic Meltdown, or the backlash is Energetic Meltdown. It's the simplest of all 3 classifications. The mild backlash, which is the first time that you fail your flat check, you just take damage equal to your level. And again, you cannot avoid this in any way. The moderate backlash is energy really messes up your body, giving you weakness to the energy type of your backlash until your next daily prep. It's equal to 1/3 of your level. You also lose any you lose any immunity that you would have. Finally, the severe backlash is that you explode. You deal 1d6 points of damage per level to all creatures in a 30-foot emanation. You automatically take full damage. So try not to explode on your allies, but in a tough situation, that's a lot of damage in a large area, so you could take out a lot of enemies. Just make sure you have a fair amount of health before intentionally trying to detonate yourself. So troll abilities are based on physical attributes rather than dragon's manipulation of energy. One of the simple ones is bone spikes. So you make bones shoot out of your body and then you can use them as weapons. So for one action, you create bone spikes. For 1 minute, you have bone spike unarmed attacks which deal 1d6 piercing damage and have the versatile slashing and sweep traits. And whenever you use the bone spikes action, you can choose a weapon that you have to give the magical properties of to your bone spikes. So you can give your potency and striking ones to your bone spikes. Or you could just, get an Amulet of Mighty Fists. No, hand wraps and mighty blows. This is not first edition. The awakening options is that, for one, both of these are creepy as hell, by the way. The first one is that your bones grow longer, meaning that they're kind of like whips. You can interact with your bone spikes to give them 10-foot reach until the beginning of your, till the end of your current turn. And I am just now realizing that may be way better than I thought it was. I need to check exactly how reach is phrased. Because it's reach 10 feet. So, I believe that just gives you 10-foot reach. It doesn't give you 15-foot reach. So it gives you 10-foot reach. It does not increase your reach by 10 feet. Still, that's very good reach. Is an incredibly useful ability to have. And even if you have to spend that action every single turn, being able to slap people with your bones from 10 feet away is creepy as hell. And I love it. Yeah, the penalties are pretty similar to playing an Oracle. They're very manageable, especially the dragon ones are manageable. The second awakening option is that the grooves in your bones are venomous. So you deal 1d4 persistent poison damage with every attack, which increases to 2d4 at level 10 and 3d4 at level 18. The other level 2 Deviant ability is Titan's Wing. You hit things really fucking hard. So this is basically power attack where you deal an extra damage die of weapon, but you also push people back 5 feet. Once you're at least 10 level, you do 2 additional damage die, and you push them back 10 feet. And level 18, it's 3 damage die, and you push them back 15. The awakening options are, one of them is on a critical hit, you push them back double the normal distance and knock them prone. The other option is on a hit, you deal 1d4 persistent bleed damage or 1d6 persistent bleed damage, and at 10th level it's 2d6, and at 18th level it's 3d6. Because if you hit someone that hard, you're probably going to cause internal bleeding. It's just accurate. Level 6 is a very good defense ability, which is High Speed Regeneration. As a free action, whenever your turn starts, you can choose to heal. You gain hit points equal to double your level, but unbeknownst to you, whenever you get this deviation, the GM selects a type of energy or a precious material, and whenever you take damage from that type, your wound smokes until the end of the next turn, preventing you from actually healing. So there's always a chance that you won't be able to heal when you need it, and please, GMs, pick something that's going to come up, because this is a very strong Deviant ability, so it should be limited in some ways. If you're looking for the most common energy type, just in general, fire damage, but if you're having a more themed campaign, you might want to pick something different. The awakening options are pretty good. So one of them is your regeneration can automatically save your life on the brink of death. Once per day, you can use it whenever your hit points would be reduced to 0 instead of the normal trigger of the beginning of your turn. You avoid getting knocked out, and instead you immediately basically, if you get this, if you awaken this at like level 10, then you would heal 20 hit points. So you'd be at 20 hit points instead of 0. Sometimes staying on your feet is a lot more important than getting knocked out and then healing yourself later. The second option is that you get a burst of energy also whenever you utilize high speed regeneration. You get a plus 10-foot status bonus to your speed until the end of your turn. That one is not nearly as useful because you don't necessarily know if you're going to need that speed boost, but you can always trigger high speed regeneration when you need it, even if the healing isn't as important. It's still really good. The healing isn't a huge amount, but so long as you can pass your flat checks a couple of times, you can get a lot of healing out of this Deviant ability. Ugh. Tectonic Stomp is the final Titan Deviant ability. So you stomp the ground, which everyone within 30 feet of you who's actually on the ground takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage for every 2 levels that you have. So at this point, you would be dealing 5d6 bludgeoning damage, and they have to make a basic reflex save. Anyone who fails their save is also knocked prone. The 2 awakening options are that you stomp and eject large fragments from the ground. You raise up 3 chunks of stone in unoccupied squares of the emanation. These cannot be adjacent to each other. They are 5 feet tall, block movement, and are large enough to take cover behind. So you can make cover that people have to attack through to get to you. So you can use this to make cover or walls for the squishier members of the party, although they're probably also going to be getting stomped at the same time. The other option is that it rattles those who fail. So anyone who critically fails their save is also stunned 1, which, I mean, yeah, that's good. Stunned is a very strong condition, although who knows how likely they are to actually critically fail. Also, sorry if my voice is deteriorating. If it sounds like that, that's because it is. I honestly might. I was intending to get through all of the classes, or not classes, archetypes today, but I might not be able to just because it's getting to the point where my voice is kind of hurting to speak. So regardless, I will be getting through half of the I will go through half of the archetypes and case files. So after Deviant abilities, that's mirrors and imposters. So I might not be able to stream for as long as I was planning to today because I haven't streamed in a bit, meaning that my voice is not ready for this. But regardless, let's talk about the backlash for the Titan abilities. It is called strained metabolism because doing all this crazy shit with your body is obviously going to use up a lot of the materials that you normally use to just function as a person, which you get from food. The mild backlash, it makes you enfeebled 1 and clumsy 1 until you take a bite of food, which normally takes 2 interact actions, one to draw and then the other to eat. Generally, that's not that bad. The moderate backlash, though, racks your body with hunger, and you're enfeebled 1, clumsy 1, and fatigued until you can eat a full meal, which takes 10 minutes. And the severe backlash is that you're basically incapacitated. So you become sickened 2, and you're also enfeebled 1 and clumsy 1 until you can eat, which requires you to no longer be sickened. And you're also fatigued until you get a full night's rest. This is way more debilitating than the dragon one, because the dragon one just does a bunch of damage to you. You can heal from that damage and just continue on adventuring for the day. Being fatigued is going to reduce your AC. I believe it's AC and not saving throws. But regardless, it is going to make you a lot less, a much more vulnerable adventurer for the rest of the day. Oh, when I say like my voice is straining, I'm changing the way that I'm talking because I am in pain. Not in much pain. It's uncomfortable. But if I keep on going for too long and then I also am in a Pathfinder session later today, my voice is going to be hoarse. Also, something that I believe I forgot to mention earlier is that everyone with a Deviant ability, or at least for every Deviant ability that you have, has basically every Deviant ability comes with 1 or 2 quirks, which can be determined randomly based on a table that's here. We're going to be going over in a second. But those can either be taken from that table or you can just come up with them. Honestly, a very easy quirk is that you just eat a shit ton of food for Titan ones, because I hit people really hard, so obviously I need to eat more food, right? No, don't question why I have Goku written down as my deity on my character sheet. Wraith abilities are the weird ones. Really, there isn't... It's unusual how you're shooting out fire from your eyes, but people do that normally already in Galarian. People hit things really hard already in Galarian. Wraith deviations are just fucking weird. So let's go over them. Eerie Flicker is a basic one, which is a reaction that whenever someone's attack would hit you, and you aren't already concealed, hidden, or undetected, your body temporarily flickers to the ethereal plane, meaning that you become concealed for 1 round, and the flat check for that concealment applies to this strike that would have hit you. So they have to make a flat check for the attack that they've made. Whenever you can also then awaken this further. Whenever one of them is whenever your body would flicker, you momentarily assume a form that is terrifying. If they fail the flat check against the concealment, they become frightened 1, and it doesn't reduce they don't reduce the frightened 1 on the turn where they got the condition. Ugh. The other awakening benefit is that you can choose to compress your flickering moment into a single moment instead of stretching it out for the rest of your turn. This increases your chance of avoiding the triggering attack in exchange for not being concealed for other attacks. So if you choose to do this, which it is a choice, it doesn't always come into effect. The concealment flat check increases to DC 9 from DC 5, but it only affects this one triggering strike. This is really useful if you know that someone is just going to be making a single big attack. And if you also don't want to get in, to become concealed and then maybe have your cleric miss you with their heal spell. The other level 2 Deviant ability for Wraith abilities is Ghostly Grasp. This one's weird. So you create an invisible arm that extends from you to grab or manipulate objects. It can reach up to 15 feet as one action, and then it grabs an unattended object of 1 bulk or less, and then deposit it into one of your free hands or just at your feet. Alternatively, it can just perform simple interact actions. For every 5 levels that you have, the amount that the hand can lift increases by 1 bulk, and its range increases by 15. Also, this can affect ghosts and incorporeal creatures. So at level 20, I believe it would have a 75-foot range, which is crazy. You just have a weird, really long ghost hand. The awakening options for this are really cool. One of them allows for you to grab people with it. Make an attack roll against someone's fortitude DC. On a success, they're grabbed and restrained on a crit success. This is just ranged grapple. Oh no. The Wraith Deviant abilities are really cool. This is just like, you can grapple someone at range without having to invest at all into athletics. However, you also can't get item bonuses to your class DC and this attack roll, so it's a little bit limited, but it's also just really cool. The other awakening option summons more than 1 ghost arm. So this targets 1 creature within range, which again increases by 15 feet every 5 levels. You then make an attack roll against that creature's fortitude DC, and on a success, you move them 5 feet in one direction or 10 feet on a crit success. I feel like the first one is a lot better, because grappling is very detrimental. Especially if you can do it from range. Like, for one action doing it from range and it's safe, you can just sit out back as a spellcaster and grapple someone, while also casting spells. Invernating Wall, some of these I'm reading for the first time from now on. Oh, Whale, not Wall. Can't read. You release a terrible wail. All living creatures within 20 feet take negative damage with a basic fort save. It's 46 damage plus 1d6 per level beyond 6. Okay. Every level, not every other level. So it's just a good way to do negative damage in an area, but you can also awaken it. So you can choose a Silent Psychic Wail instead, which changes the damage type to be mental damage, and changes the will save to be a will save, and removes the auditory trait. So this allows for you to use your wail whenever you're trying to be stealthy. Whenever you're trying to be stealthy, which might not be all the time, but that's going to happen sometimes. The other awakening ability allows for you to sap people's strength, in addition to the normal effects of it, and this is the real loud screaming variety. All living creatures in the area are enfeebled 1 for a round up if they succeed, enfeebled 1 for a minute if they fail, and enfeebled 2 for a minute on a critical failure. Enfeebled isn't going to really be all that important for some creatures, but it's very important for others. If they are a big, strong guy who hits you really hard with weapons, enfeebled is good. Distant Wandering is the final deviant ability in this book, and it's basically astral projection. So for one action, your body falls unconscious and your spirit steps out. You can't consciously move your body, and you're invisible and inaudible, so someone might still notice that you're there. Just like how an invisible creature can be affected by silence or prying eye or all these other things. You can move around, though you can't touch or move anything, cast spells, attack, or really do much of anything in combat. You aren't incorporeal, so you can't move through walls. And most things can't affect you in spirit form, though Spirit Blast and Spirit Song can. You can go back to your body as a free action. If you are in spirit form at the beginning of your turn, you must attempt another backlash check. Then if you fail, you go back to your body. This can be pretty useful for scouting, but again, this isn't going to last for all that long. The awakening benefit is you get a fly speed and you can move 20 feet, or your movement speed is increased by 20 feet, and that's a status bonus. Which means that if you're a monk, you probably won't actually get much of a benefit to your speed. The other awakening option is that time seems to move different. Whenever you enter spirit form, you can recall knowledge or seek, and you're quickened, meaning that you can use this extra action to recall knowledge and seek, which makes it substantially better for scouting purposes, because it means that compared to every other person who's trying to scout out things, you have a lot more opportunities to try and seek for secret doors or traps, even if you're only going to be there for a couple of rounds. Okay, so the backlash for Wraith Deviant abilities is Encroaching Presence, which is you get your abilities from somewhere beyond, which exposes you to something beyond. The bottom backlash is kind of terrible, which is that you become Frightened 3. Which is really going to mess you up for the 3 turns that you're going to be frightened. The moderate backlash is for 10 minutes, all creatures become concealed to you as they're covered in weird visual distortions of reality that only you are aware of. The severe backlash is your life force is siphoned away from you, as your life force is pulled to wherever you get your powers from, meaning that you become Doomed 1 and Drained 2 until your next daily preparations. As you can probably tell, this is the worst set of backlashes from all of the abilities. Honestly, I think that the dragon backlash is not nearly debilitating enough, because it doesn't give you any permanent effect for the rest of the day outside of a really small weakness to one damage type. But now we should talk about quirks, because basically what the quirks are non-mechanical, although if you think it's reasonable for them to give a mechanical benefit, it shouldn't be more than a plus or minus one impact. Also, if you are working with a GM to create a deviant ability from your background, then you should both work together to figure out the quirks. It shouldn't just be up to the player. But if the GM is giving everyone quirks for a specific situation in a campaign, they can just do whatever the hell they want. These are stuff like, you have to pray to an unknown deity in a language you don't understand to use your abilities, or you suck out colors from people around you, or, I don't know, you bleed from your nose, or stuff like that. Just weird stuff that doesn't make any sense. You really have freedom to go buck wild with these. So, moving on from deviant abilities, we have deviant spells. And deviant spells are pretty much just new spells. They aren't deviant in any way. They're just new occult spells. So, there's a fair amount of them here. Not like a huge amount, but enough enough to probably make some spellcasters happy, especially occult ones. Some of these I covered yesterday, so I'm not going to try and save my voice a little bit of suffering, but they're going to be on screen so you can read them. So bilocation is effectively you're in two places at once, and you share hit points, although if you're affected by an area effect, you're only affected once by it. And you stay in two places at once even if you are knocked unconscious, but you can dismiss the spell at any point, in which case you choose which one of the selves was real all along. It's pretty good. It can be useful for some situations, but you do suffer the consequences of being in both places at the same time, and it is a 9th level spell. There's a lot of crazy shenanigans that I can imagine that you can do with this. I just wish that you could use it to, like, I wish it had a longer duration. So you could do all kinds of crazy shenanigans at like a high level where you're literally doing a job at two different places at the same time. Bracing Tendrils is a force spell, arcane and occult, 2 actions that last for a minute, where tendrils of force anchor you to the ground. So, whenever you're on the ground and a creature tries to forcibly move you, you can use your spell DC instead of your fortitude DC as the DC of the check. If they wouldn't normally need a check to move you, you can attempt to basically counteract their ability. Whenever a creature fails to move you in this way, you can choose to have them lash out and push them away from you. Additionally, you can move just fine whenever you are using this spell. It just stops other people from moving you. Empty Pack is a fun utility ability, or utility spell, that makes one container appear empty. It just turns everything inside of it invisible. It doesn't make it any lighter or prevent noise, but if you do upend it, nothing falls out. So it looks empty, but if they were to search it, they would realize that there's something in there. You can also heighten this to make it last for the entire day. This is great for smuggling. People, if someone looks inside of a box, they're not gonna feel around inside of the box for like invisible objects. Or like they're not gonna, they'll look inside of your backpack, but they might not feel around for like invisible drugs or something. Etheric Shards is one that we covered yesterday. It basically just makes a huge area in which moving through it, you have to take a bunch of piercing damage as you fracture reality. Falling Sky is a level 8 arcane and occult spell where you choose a 30-foot radius cylinder that's 60 feet tall, where a lot of telekinetic force comes down from the top and smashes things into the ground. Creatures that are flying in the area get just shoved down, and they take double the amount of falling damage they would normally to a maximum of 60. And they also take the falling damage even if they don't hit the ground, because presumably you just make a floor of telekinetic force, so you, I don't know, like hydraulic press them into the ground. Creatures that are on the ground and within the spell's area have to make a fortitude save. If they crit, nothing happens, and it isn't knocked prone even if it took falling damage. If they succeed, then they are knocked prone. And if someone's flying, they can still be knocked prone. It's like they're knocked off balance. If they fail their saving throw, they are knocked prone and stunned too. And if they critically fail, they are knocked prone and stunned for a round. Yeah, this is very early, even for me, because I've got a Pathfinder game in the afternoon, and I wanted to get this out of the way and get there as much as I can before my voice dies, which is probably going to be like another case file, because I talked for like 7.5 hours yesterday, and I've already been talking for 2 hours today, and I'm not used to talking that much. My voice is dying. Focusing Hum is a fun spell, one action, somatic verbal spell, which creates a 50-foot emanation, and anyone who tries to cast a spell while stupefied in the area, their flat check DC is 2 lower. Also, anyone who is confused doesn't attack anyone, including themselves. They just stand there doing nothing. This can be sustained for up to a minute. If you get, I don't know, this is very good if you get affected by a trap or effect that just makes the entire party except for one person confused. You can just say, no, don't attack me. You're going to be standing here as I try and fix this situation somehow in a different way. Also, just a side note, easily the most terrifying class to get confused is a Magus, because you're only allowed to make weapon attacks and cantrips whenever you're confused, and a reasonable GM will say, well, you should just be able to spell strike with a cantrip. So a normal character who's confused is going to be making normal attacks, where a Magus is pulling out the big guns. It's fun. Implement of Destruction is a very fun spell. It's similar to the Weapon of Awe spell from Pathfinder 1e, where you target one enemy and a weapon that is wielded by you or an ally or is unattended, and you declare that that weapon is going to bring death to someone, which plants fear into the heart of the target. They have to make a will save. If they crit, nothing happens. If they succeed, then the first time that that weapon deals damage, then they take 2d6 mental damage. If they fail, though, that weapon deals 2d6 persistent mental damage to the target. And if they are critically hit by it, they're doomed 1 for as long as they take this persistent damage. Doomed 1 is not going to affect NPCs at all, but it is really bad for PCs to have. If they critically fail, though, they take 46 persistent mental damage, and if they are critically hit by the weapon, they're doomed 1. For every 2 levels that it gets heightened, the damage increases about as much as you would expect. This is a fun buff, especially if you're able to cast this in RP before you start the combat. But I don't know, I just like the idea of saying, this sword is going to kill you, and then it actually does more damage. Kinetic Ram is a 1 to 3 action spell that just gathers telekinesis around you and then moves things away. Any creature in it has to make a fortitude save or be pushed 10 feet away from you or 20 feet on a critical failure. The spell's area and range depend on how many actions you use. For one action, it just targets one person within 15 feet of you. If you use two actions, it targets one person within 30 feet, and the distance is doubled, meaning if they critically fail, they're shoved 40 feet. And also, if they critically fail, they're knocked prone as part of it and take 1d6 bludgeoning damage. And if you spend 3 actions, it targets everyone within 5 feet of you. So it's a very good get off me card, and it's also amazing for knocking people off of cliffs. Like, fantastic for knocking people off of cliffs. Moving someone 10 feet away from you if they fail a saving throw against a level 1 spell is very good. Ask for more ask for the GM to put more spike pits into enemy dungeons. Momentary Recovery is a kind of weird spell. It's very good. For 2 actions, you teleport yourself to somewhere within range that you can see, so somewhere within 60 feet. And if it would bring someone with you, it fails. After you vanish, but before you show up, you can take up to 2 actions or less if you quicken this spell. You can't target anyone else with this, but basically this is a mini time stop, where you can't target anyone else, but you have 2 actions to cast another buff spell on yourself, to heal, or do something. Honestly, you can do a lot with 2 actions once you can cast 7th level spells. Moth's Supper has a duration of 1 hour. It's a 3rd level spell. You sigh and your breath turns into a bunch of butterflies and moths. They flutter around you briefly and then rain forth in search of sustenance, like blood, rotting corpses, flowering plants, or just leftover food. They then return, perching into your hair. Oh, this is a weird spell. You heal 2d4 hit points for every 10 minutes for the hour. The first time during the duration when someone treats your wounds, you heal additional 44 hit points, and you get an imprecise sense up to 30 feet that senses only freshly spilled blood and rotten flesh. What the hell is this spell? I love it. Everyone's gonna look at you weird. Oh, this is great. So you effectively would heal, what, like 12d4 hit points for a 3rd level spell over the course of an hour, plus 44 from treat wounds, and I mean, freshly spilt blood and rotten flesh just follow around adventurers, to be fair. Phase Bolt is a fun cantrip that we talked about yesterday, which ignores any, or rather reduces any circumstance bonuses to AC from shields or cover by 2, and just does some piercing damage. It's a fun cantrip. Poltergeist Fury is a 3-action spell with a 20-foot emanation, basic reflex save that can be sustained for a minute. Your fury spills into a telekinetic storm of terrifying proportions. Loose objects in the area are picked up and orbit you. All creatures take 64 piercing damage with a basic reflex save. Every time you sustain the spell, you can increase the radius by 10 feet up to a maximum of a 100-foot radius. The storm moves with you and provides you with lesser cover that you can't use this to hide or sneak because it's so fucking obvious where you are. Allies within the storm who get a success on their saving throw get a crit success. But if they fail, they still take the damage. Or crit fail. This is a weird spell that is very cool. Like, I really like it, and I feel like that works pretty well for a PC to use, but it works amazingly for, like, a boss. Rally Point is another one that we talked about yesterday, which is a teleportation effect where you choose a location, and then once in the next minute, you can spend an action to teleport back there. Like many other teleports, you can't bring anyone with you. If you heighten to 7th level, then you can target up to 4 other creatures, and each of you can teleport to the rally point once in the spell's duration. So, I mean, it's okay. It would be a lot better if it had like a 10-minute duration. 1 minute is not a lot of time. Sea of Thought is a 2-action, 3rd level spell. In a 15-foot burst within 60 feet of you, you cover the area in a torrent of semi-solidified thought. It becomes difficult terrain, similar to a shallow bog. Each round that a creature starts the area in its turn in the area must attempt a fortitude save against shifting waves of thought. On a failure, it takes a -10. So basically, you can apply a speed penalty or knock people prone inside the area. That's okay. It's not crazy good. It can be really annoying, but I guess it's still good. But it's not like absurd. You can get a crazy big radius though if you increase the if you heighten it. So Shadow Spy is a spell that takes 1 action to cast, but it lasts until you make your daily prep. You mix blood, soil, and shadow to form a half-real homunculi in the shape of a crow, sparrow, or other bird. Then command it to fly to a location within range, which is 120 feet, and observe all around it. The bird has the statistics of a homunculi, save that as all of your senses and shares your perception mod. Once its duration ends, or a trigger whenever you set, which is like dusk, the bird flies to your location. If you wring its neck and drink its blood, Jesus. It's one of those spells. Now, yeah, I think that you only have to be within range for the casting of the spell, so you can like scatter these all over town and then say at dusk come back to my room at the inn. So you can like set these up as basically CCTV cameras, so you can keep an eye out for various things going on around a location. Very situational, but man, it's still cool. Soft Landing is a 2-action spell with a range of a mile. This is a weird spell. You create a 20-foot tall, 60-foot radius cylinder with the ground at the bottom. It lasts for a minute, and it's a magical field that slows down everything falling, providing a harmless landing from any height. You fall generally 1,500 feet around. So if you're falling from more than that, you can generally cast the spell as you're falling to ensure a safe landing, provided that you can see your landing point and it's within range. I'm assuming you would need you would have to fall at least 1,000 feet to be able to time this accurately. I've never fallen more than 1,000 feet in a Pathfinder game. That's one heck of a fall. So Telekinetic Bombardment is a fun spell. Level 7, range of 500 feet. It's a 10-foot burst for a 30-foot line. You grasp a part of the landscape and throw it at someone. It crashes down in a 10-foot burst or 30-foot line, dealing 14d6 bludgeoning damage, turning the area into difficult terrain. Okay, so it's an unusual line, and that can start anywhere within range, because you're throwing a tree at someone. The tree doesn't have to start next to you. So it's basically a God, my brain isn't working. It's basically a basic reflex save, except if they fail, they're knocked prone, and if they critically fail, they're knocked prone and stunned 1. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's the same damage as a fireball, but in a smaller area, but with worse effects on failure. Not bad. And Warp Step is a cantrip that we talked about yesterday, where you can just stride twice and you get a status bonus to your speed. Alright, so I said I'd do this, so let's move on from here. That's the end of the Deviant abilities case file. Let's move on to the mirrors and imposters. There's two pieces of DC facing mechanics in this section. One being the reflection versatile heritage, and the second, if I stop highlighting everything, is an archetype called the alter ego, which is very, very cool. I love this archetype. But first, let's talk about the reflection. So the reflection is a heritage that can be applied to any ancestry, which is that you're a copy or a reflection of a person from that ancestry. So let's just talk about this. So I forget, I think that there are at least some direct mechanics. Yeah, so you don't have to attempt a deception check to impersonate the person that you are a reflection of, unless you're interacting with people who know them personally. Additionally, you can choose from reflection feats. So a lot of these are lineage feats, meaning that you have to take them at level 1, and they represent how exactly you became, or how exactly you were created. So Clone Risen, you are formed from a clone ritual or something else. You are a direct magical or alchemical clone of a different person. And you can suppress your sentience, because clones don't normally have sentience. So once per day, whenever you would take mental damage or be affected by a mental effect, you get a +2 circumstance bonus on will saves, and gain resistance equal to your level to mental damage against the triggering effect. This is only against the initial effect, not any subsequent saves or persistent damage. Mirror Risen is from people who are made from magic involving mirrors. Mirror Trickery is a once per day reaction where you would get hit from a strike, where you create a duplicate of yourself as if the person was looking in a mirror who was attacking you, and they have to attempt a DC 11 fat check, and if they fail, they hit the duplicate, meaning nothing happens. It reduces the it turns a critical success into a success, and a success into a failure on the strike that was hitting you. Never mind. I apparently did not read this one completely fully before. So Morph Risen is that you used to be a shapeshifter or a spellcaster that can use polymorph magic, but you fucked up and you're trapped in a particular person's form. And it might have drained your power, or you might have retained some of your skills, but either way, you resist other forced transformations. You get a bonus against saving throws that are transmutation effects. If you roll success on a saving throw against a hostile morph or polymorph effect, you get a crit success instead. So this opens up a fun possibility of, like, you used to be a level 15 druid who then decided to turn and polymorph himself into one specific person and then lost all of their powers. You have to start over from level 1. Progenitor Lore gives you training in deception and occultism, and also you get a lore corresponding with your ancestry. So elf lore if your progenitor was an elf. So you retain some of their memories. Warp Reflection is a simple action that you can take once per minute. You shift your appearance, because your appearance is mutable, as you are already inherently mutable, to something that is absolutely terrifying. You choose someone within 30 feet, and that person has to succeed at a will DC against whatever your class DC or spell DC, or whichever is higher, to become frightened 1 or 2 on a critical failure. And then it's also stupefied for as long as it's frightened. Once you've used Warp Reflection against one specific creature, you can't do it for another day. So this is basically just inherent demoralize without being needed to be trained in intimidation or without needing a good charisma. Because you just shift into someone's worst nightmare. Lovely. At 5th level, you can take Mistaken Identity, so once per minute, whenever you're about to attempt a save throw against a mental effect, you convince yourself an effect is targeting your mind is meant for theirs instead. So you roll twice, take the better. However, you're kind of breaking your identity and like how you perceive yourself, so you become Frightened 1. Depending on the mental effect, becoming Frightened 1 is really worth it. It's better to be Frightened 1 than to be dominated. Reflective Pocket requires that you're mirror risen, and then you can store an item inside of a small hand mirror. So it's one item of light bulk or less, and you can see whatever item it is inside of the mirror instead of which would normally reflect. And you get a bonus on checks to conceal the item, unless someone specifically is going to be looking at the mirror. Replicate requires that you are clone risen, and you can cast Illusory Disguise once per day as an innate occult spell, but it is actually a transmutation and morph effect instead of an illusion, because you actually change your body instead of it being an illusion effect. Warp Likeness requires that you're morph risen, and once per minute, whenever you hit a creature with a melee strike as your last action, you channel some of your own nature through the blow, temporarily changing your target to resemble you. The creature that you hit has to make a Fortitude save against the higher of your class DC or spell DC. On a success, they resist the effects, but its form twists into the process, so it's Clumsy 1 until the end of its next turn. If they get a crit, nothing happens. If they fail, then their body briefly looks like you. It's Clumsy 1 until the end of its next turn, and is also Sickened 1 because you just, polymorph their body. On a critical failure, they warp to resemble yours for a significant period of time, which is a minute, where it's Clumsy 1 for that minute, and it is Sickened 2. Weird stuff that is going to get you a lot of weird looks. Mirror Refuge is a 9th level feat. You have to be mirror risen, obviously. And then once per day with 2 actions, when you're standing next to a mirrored surface, you can use Meld into Stone, where you meld into the mirror. You can hear but not hear outside of the space, and no one can see or hear you. You can cast spells from inside the mirror, but no effects can go outside of it. This lasts for 10 minutes unless the mirror is broken, which expels you and deals 10d6 damage to you. So try not to let that happen. You appear next to a mirror, and this is just amazing for getting into places, like smuggling people inside of a building by, I don't know, going into a hand mirror and then giving it to someone to get someone inside of a building. 2 Truths requires being a master in deception, and then for 1 action, you imitate your progenitor really well. When you use it, you alter your thought processes to your progenitor or from your progenitor back to yourself. So long as what you say is true from the viewpoint of your current identity, you can say it even when you're compelled to tell the truth. If you're in an intrigue campaign, this is very good. Unyielding Disguise requires you to be able to cast Illusory Disguise or Humanoid Form. You can get Illusory Disguise from the Replicate Clone Risen feat. Whenever you cast these spells to alter your appearance, it can last 2 hours instead of the normal 1. At the end of the duration, you can extend the spell's duration by another hour by making you drained 1. You can keep on doing this way up until a maximum duration of 6 hours, which would make you drained 4. Thanks. It's killing my voice, but I'm doing it. I can turn down the music. Should be a bit quieter now. So, the 13th level, feats is Malleable Form. You have to be able to cast at least one polymorph spell, and you must, in the requirement for the action, is that you're polymorphed by a spell that has multiple choices of battle form. So, you just shift your form, taking on a different appearance. So you pick a different battle form of that specific. But yeah, I can't hear the actual differences that I'm making. So let me know if there's any adjustments that you want me to make, and I'll do it. But I can't exactly hear it. So basically, Malleable Form allows for you to shift between different battle forms that are given by the same spell. Although it does reduce the duration by 1 minute. So you can shift between, like, I forget what Monstrous Form gives you. I think it's Monstrous Form that gives you the choice between a Phoenix, a Purple Worm. I'm forgetting what the third option is, but you could swap between a Phoenix to a Purple Worm and then back again. Still pretty good. It gives a lot more flexibility than you would normally have from Polymorph. Throat is dying. Okay, so redirect attention. Whenever you would be directly targeted by a scrying effect of any kind, the effect must attempt a counteract level check against your spell DC or class DC, and if it fails, they see the copy of you or the original version of you rather than actually you. That's just really consistent of, like, protection from divination, or specifically scrying, which, again, in an intrigue campaign, which is, I think, really when this versatile heritage shines, that's really nice. Reflect Flow is the final feat from the Reflection versatile heritage. You create a copy of a foe by calling them forth from a nearby reflection. Clonally, I've never seen clonally as a word before. Yeah, I've never seen clonally as a word, but you can cast Duplicate Foe once per day as an innate occult spell. At 20th level, it's an 8th level Duplicate Foe. I have not seen Duplicate Foe as a spell before. So I'm looking that up right now. Duplicate Foe. Oh, so it's like a shadow conjuration thing. It's kind of shadow. No, it is literally accessible by the shadow bloodline. Okay, I mean, that's a very cool ability. I don't necessarily know how good it is, but it's incredibly flavorful. So I'm down for it. So let's not look at all the hazard stuff, because we're looking at stuff specifically for PCs. So Alter Ego is such a cool archetype. I wish that could cover more archetypes today, but this is going to be the last one because my throat is dying. And I have other things that I need to do today. So the Alter Ego archetype is all about really going in depth and analyzing one person and then becoming them. So this is the spy archetype. This is, I'm going to really figure out exactly how someone's butler acts, all of their mannerisms, how they do their job, so then I can take out their butler and then replace them and nobody will know the difference. It's not necessarily a combat archetype, but it's a very, very, very cool intrigue archetype. So, the dedication itself is uncommon. So you make yourself into a living mirror, becoming a double of someone unremarkable. So you become an expert in deception, and you get the assume role activity. So after you've spent at least an hour studying a person who you intend to copy, and have at least spent that hour for the past 3 days, you like tailing or spying on them, or using magic, or some other method, you quickly and accurately learn how to do mundane jobs, or at least copy the movements to appear as if you know what you're doing. It's always a role and not a specific person. So, like, my example of the butler earlier, you would not appear as if you were that butler. I think there's an ability for that later, but you would just appear as if an accomplished butler. You perform the impersonate activity to pass as a member of that role and get a bonus on any deception checks you have to make. This takes the normal amount of time, and you also choose one lore that would be relevant, and while in your role you get a +1 circumstance bonus on that lore skill, and if you're untrained you can use your level as your proficiency bonus. So effectively you can study someone, like study a sailor, and then act as a sailor, and no one's gonna look either way because you act really, really well like you're a sailor. Change of face is a level 4 skill feat that isn't associated with any skill as far as I can tell, but when you impersonate someone you don't need a disguise kit anymore, as simple illusions and temporary transmutations just ripple over you like mirror shards, providing all the supplies that a disguise kit normally would do. And generally that means that your impersonate activity now gains the occult trait, but weirdly enough, not the magic trait. Fake it till you make it is useful, and of course, in all parts of life. Faking it till you make it is just a good strategy in general. But regardless, it is a normal feat, it's not a skill feat. It's like, yeah, it is live. It's only like, it's about noon. It's not too early. Started at like 9:15. I wake up at 6 in the morning, so it's not that early for me. But fake it till you make it. Whenever you assume a role, you choose 2 skills that are associated with a role. If you're untrained, you use your level as your proficiency bonus, and you get a +1 circumstance bonus on those skill checks, so long as you remain in that role. So for that sailor example from earlier, you might learn survival or nature maybe to try and, you know, sail things, and probably athletics to do things on a ship. In plain sight, this is a really fun skill feat. Well, while you have assumed a role, you can use deception instead of stealth to avoid notice out of combat, so long as you're in an area where your role wouldn't be unusual. So people, oh, yeah, it's much earlier than I normally stream. So basically, with that sailor example, if you are disguised as a sailor, you can use deception to just blend into the background on the docks, or into a fancy party if you've disguised yourself as a butler. Sound Mirror is a level 6 feat. You can cast Silence on yourself as a 2nd level spell once per day, and Ventriloquism as a 1st level innate occult spell both once per day. You can also cast Ghost Sound, which all 3 of those spells are incredibly useful if you're going to be an infiltrator, which presumably you're going to be an infiltrator if you're taking this archetype. Sound is a lot harder to replicate without using magic, so this is great. Muscle Mimicry is in a way, it's a deception and athletics skill feat, where it, as a reaction after an enemy makes a successful disarm, escape, grapple, shove, or trip, you can study their actions and then copy them. The next time that you take the exact same action that they did, you get a +1 circumstance bonus on your athletics check, or a +2 if they critically succeeded on their action. So effectively, you are so good at studying and copying people that you can look at them and then just do exactly what they did because it seemed to work really well when they did it. I kind of wish that you could copy an ally as well, because if they're succeeding, then why wouldn't you just copy them too? But it's still pretty good. Although a lot of enemies who are going to be grappling people or shoving them or tripping them are just going to be using the trip or grab or shove monster abilities where they don't have to roll. They don't use athletics for it. Yeah, I hope you get your PDF soon. I got lucky again and got mine early. I don't believe that Paizo did any kind of manipulation for that, because I am not a large enough YouTuber to get that kind of special privilege yet. I just got lucky, so good luck to you. But Swap Reflections is a level 8 feat. Where once per 10 minutes, you've learned how to use your reflection to your advantage. You send your own reflection to forcibly swap places with the reflection of an enemy, pulling each of you through opposite ends and switching places. They have to be within 120 feet of you, and you both must be adjacent to reflective surfaces like glass, mirrors, or water. You have to be able to see the target's reflection and have a line of effect to it. They get a will save. If they succeed, you swap positions with your target, or you arrive adjacent to your target, whichever one the target would like. If they get a failure on their will save, you are the one who gets to make the what am I trying to say? Yeah, if they get a failure on their will save, you get to make the choice instead of them, so you swap positions or arrive adjacent to the target. If they critically fail, you can swap positions with your target, and the target becomes trapped in its own reflection for a minute. On each of its turns, it can spend one action to attempt another will save to escape. So you can just, like, basically look at someone's reflection and trap them inside of a mirror. Which is so cool. Yeah, and Fake It Till You Make It is restricted by not being able to do train skills, but I guess if you're a human and take Clever Improviser, then you can. But then Fake It Till You Make It isn't as good. But it's still, like, useful, because a lot... Fake It Till You Make It is very good if you are more representing a manual labor sort of situation. It's not, because those are generally going to be... You can do most athletics checks untrained, but if you're trying to be a scribe or a scholar or like a duke, then it might be a bit different, because those skills are probably going to be a lot harder and require more training. The final feat that I am going to be covering today, because my throat is on the urge of mutiny, is Borrow Memories. It's the only uncommon feat in the uncommon archetype. So if you can take this archetype, and you're allowed to by your DM or GM, you can take all of the other feats, no problem, but you have to ask again if you can take this one. So you can cast Mind Probe as an innate spell once per day, using your class DC or spell DC, whichever one is higher. If you cast Mind Probe on a target that you're studying for the purpose of assuming their role, and the target fails their save, you can delay the spell from coming into effect until you actually assume their role. And then once you use the spell in this way, you can sustain it up to 10 times during its duration, asking for a different question each time. And it lasts until you ask all 10 questions or are no longer assuming the role. So again, to use the butler example, you cast Mind Probe on a butler that you are effectively stalking to learn exactly what they're doing, and then they fail their saving throw, and then once you're actually assuming their role, you can just cast ask questions with Mind Probe to figure out exactly what a butler is supposed to be doing. You also don't need to sustain the spell to extend its duration, only when you have to ask a question, and you don't have to be in range or even have line of sight. This is very useful because one of the big limitations of trying to play like a suave infiltrator sort of character, like super spy character, is that while your PC might be a suave infiltrator character, you aren't, and most likely, and you're probably not going to be as good at thinking on the feet, and you didn't stalk someone for 3 days to figure out exactly how to perform their role. Your character did. So being able to just effectively ask the GM, hey, what's the appropriate thing for me to do here, is really good. But I love this archetype because, yeah, it doesn't have many actual combat capabilities, but it's so cool for like an intrigue focused urban campaign. This is one of the coolest archetypes for it. And yeah, I'm gonna have to call it there for today, because one, it's taking longer than expected to go through all of these, so I won't have time to go through them all anyway, even if I did keep on going before I've gotta stop for a Pathfinder game. And the other reason is because I feel my throat trying to stab me. So until I see you next, live a wonderful life, and good luck getting all of your PDFs soon and getting your shipping notices.